Thank you, everybody, for coming once again to this roundtable brought to you by Cognify Solutions. Our topic today is going to be of AI governance. Our topic will be AI and privacy. It's something that folks don't necessarily think of often enough across the board, especially when we're handling data, when we're handling client information. We have an idea of how that's useful in that moment to collect it. But once we actually collect it and process it, there are a lot of assumptions that we make, a lot of places that goes. And we want to talk about that today, especially in the age of AI. This is brought to you by the Cognify Insight Network. This is a community that Cognify Solutions is putting together. If you are here and a member of this community, thank you so much for coming once again, finding out Robert to join us and share your insights and listen to perhaps some insights that we perhaps have, and maybe even generate some more as we collaborate. If you are new to this community, thank you so much for taking the time to see what we're about. We want to make sure that if the conversation we're having around AI governance and ensuring that AI systems are being used with intentionality and in tandem with human agency and responsibly, that our voice is not the only voice there. As we stand up to try to make a meaningful, moral, ethical change and put that guidance forth in the market, we want to ensure that we're bringing together a community to help contribute to that position, to contribute to those recommendations. Because something that important, if we may be humble to say, shouldn't just be our own team contributing to that. As such, because this is a community event, and this is one of our roundtable sessions, we want to actually give an opportunity for everybody to go and introduce themselves. So I'll go first as an example. Quick 15 seconds, name, company, location, fun fact. All right. My name's Chris Feimster. I'm CEO of Nexus Systems, the parent of Cognify Solutions, hailing from sunny and a little toasty Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, part of the Eastern Seaboard, or if anybody's international. Fun fact about myself, I would say that everybody may have interesting stories about how they got into technology. I got into this because my dad was into this. Yes, folks, IT is old enough that there's more than one generation in this field now. All right. Going next, Alcolia. How about Richard?
Hi, everyone. I am Richard Schreiber. I'm an officer in Cognify Solutions. I'm happy to be part of the AI governance conversation. I also fulfill the front end of the equation, if you will, by building AI automation and agentic solutions for small to medium-sized businesses, specializing actually in law firms and women-led law firms. Fun fact, believe it or not, I was indeed, according to per the Moody Blues song, a singer in a rock and roll band when I was in high school. I had long hair and would belt out tunes from the Doobie Brothers, Orleans, Elton John, you name it, anything in the 70s, the single greatest decade of popular music in America's history.
Fantastic. We may need to get a demo tape from you at some point. All right. Next up, Todd.
You're really dating yourself, Richard, and I too at one point had hair, but I'm Todd Henley. I'm the founder and principal of Paperkite.ai. I do information and AI governance programs for small to medium-sized organizations, and especially in the regulated space. In balmy Columbus, Ohio. You already got my fun fact about the makeup in that one day in college, so you don't get any more than that. Just can't open up the book of my life in the middle and start reading.
That's all right. Like I said, let's save it for the community portal. You got to join the community.
That's right.
All right. Next up, Manny.
Hi, everyone. My name is Manny Fu with Impact CIO Services. We provide Chief Informational Officer fractional services, very different than a CTO. If you don't know the difference, because they are very different, although people use them synonymously, interchangeably, have a one-on-one with me. me. So I am located in a very hot heat index 105 Washington, D.C. today.
Wow.
Fun fact? Let's see. Fun fact. Two things. One, I am a certified downhill ski instructor. I'm also a certified search and rescue scuba diver.
Wow.
Cool.
It's good to know, Manny. I'll have to invite you along on my next diving expose.
Oh, do you dive scuba?
I'm just beginning. Yeah, I'm
Wow.
snorkeling for a bit. Oh, yeah.
Yes,
Don't do
That piece of advice, in addition to your basic open water, get your advanced.
That makes sense. All right. Cool. Thank you, Manny. Next up, Blama.
Hey everybody, so my name is Blama Sarner. I'm the Chief Dream Officer at Web Collaborative. We're located in the greater Philadelphia area, and I like to say we unleash the untapped potential of individuals, companies, and organizations through creative ideation, innovation, and exponential technologies. A fun fact for me would be one that I actually got a chance to perform on the same stage as with the Wu-Tang Clan, or Ghostface Killer. Be specific.
Awesome.
Well, Cassidy is another Philadelphia artist, and then another guy by the name of Sahai the King. Sahai the King, I think. Sahai the King. So that was an interesting situation. I had to leave. We were actually doing a competition in Brooklyn, and I had to leave because I had to go back for a wedding. But yeah, I have to come back with me.
Yeah. Wow.
Indeed. Duly noted. All right. We'll chat. Next up, Socrates. If you are able to unmute, that's fine. If not, we'll come back. Oh, go ahead. Introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Socrates. I was born and raised in Haiti. I'm a veteran, retired veteran in the military. Now I'm running Airbnb business, and I'm working on my clothing brand, then motivation. Yeah, that's pretty much everything about me.
Fantastic. Do you have a fun fact?
Yeah, I like to be in the kitchen. I like cooking.
You're in good company, friend. You are in good
Yep.
company.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
All right. Welcome. I'm so glad that you can join us, Socrates. All right. Next up, Jane.
Aloha, everyone. My name is Jane Luong, CEO founder of JST Consulting 7. I focus specifically on philanthropic consulting. So I help grassroots founders find funding and build relationships and such. Fun fact about me is I'm a huge fan of Batman. So I dress up as Batman, head to toe, full on voice changer mask, and hand out candy to the kids, or just do it to make people laugh and smile. I love any excuse to pull out my full on Batman costume. So yeah, that's me.
Say it, Jane. Say it.
Say it.
Yeah, you gotta say it.
No.
Oh, come on, bro. Just one.
Okay.
One. I'm Batman.
Okay, I am Batman. I had to wear my full on voice changer mask.
Really?
It's not the same without it. But
I
let
won.
me tell you, during COVID, I was like, how do I turn my mask in with a shield to a COVID mask?
I wanted the full unexpurgated and unfiltered.
You know what? Maybe we might, as serious as a topic as governance can be, maybe we'll play around with this. You know, if everybody invites somebody and we get to 20 people next week, maybe I'll do a whole presentation in the deep Christian Bale voice.
Please. Just for that, I'm going to invite 12 people alone. Incentive, Chris. That's incentive.
Bet.
Yes.
Probably.
Thanks for the invite, Richard.
All right, man. Last but not least, Vinod.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Vinod Metra. I am in Boston area for the past 25 years. I was fortunate to work for some of the major financial companies here. I founded ClusterX last year. Until then, I was part of the corporate. Data governance, AI governance is very close to my heart. And I took actually a GP certification early this year from IAPP. I don't know if you heard about it. Chris, at least you probably know. I was thinking 2025 is going to be big on AI governance with all the rapid evolutions that are happening. But I don't see it as big as I envisioned. But the course gave me a lot of insight into AI governance, responsible AI, ethical AI, and all those aspects.
Indeed.
So when Richard invited me, I definitely did not want to miss it. So I am very much interested in seeing rest of your presentation. Fun fact is, I just Socrates. I spend time cooking. I play volleyball. I play table tennis. I watch movies. Spend time with kids. That's pretty much what I do.
That's a good time. That's a good time. All right. Everybody, thank you so much for those introductions. Again, we're building a community here. We want to make sure that we're not just paying lip service to the name. So at the end, if you haven't already, I'll include some details where you can sign up to join the community, jump in the portal, and be able to communicate with one another, see resources that we'll start uploading, see other replays, and really start to connect with one another.
And did we mention for a special time introductory offer, it's free?
Indeed. The community currently costs $0. As we start to load this up with fantastic folks and fantastic information, we might revisit that. We want to make sure it's accessible, but we might. So if you're in it now, you're in. Don't know about later. All right. So the agenda for this evening, we'll be discussing AI and data privacy. That tug of war between these two things that no company can ignore. We will go through a brief presentation, just giving some tent poles for the topic. And then considering the size that we have, we're going to go a little bit of a round robin and just have an open discussion about that, about AI and privacy. Some challenges that you may see if you've worked with this before, any wins you'd like to share, some particular pitfalls we see on the horizon, especially for folks with brands that are reaching to Europe. And then once after about 10 or 15 minutes of that discussion, then we'll have an open conversation. We can discuss the larger things going on in the AI governance space, community matters, what have you. All right. So with that, I'm going to change my screen share. Bear with me. And bring this up. Sharing.
It's just one quote that I'll share before you kick this in is I heard somewhere that says AI is moving fast, but your data privacy strategy better move faster.
Keep that in mind, because I would say that helps to ground a lot of the importance of this. Absolutely. All right. Indeed. AI and data privacy, the silent tug of war no company can afford to ignore. What's shifting, what's risky, and why we're gathering today. This was actually put out yesterday to talk about it. So nearly 90% of companies expect AI to drive business transformation in the next 5 years. But do we actually know where our data is going or who it's training?
Or do we even know where our data is? That's a more fundamental prevailing question that harkens back to my prior question.
Data provenance. That's something I do hope we'll get a chance to discuss. That is very important, especially for IP. But continue on. Privacy investigations triggered by AI model leaks and data exposure incidents, regulatory scrutiny, consent policies are under increasing examination, and shadow AI usage, employees feeding proprietary documents into consumer AI tools. We have found that this is a big one. If your AI strategy doesn't have privacy built in, it's not a strategy, it's a liability. Now, privacy by design. Traditional privacy governance, traditional PII handling, things like that, meant locking down systems post-deployment. In this AI era, that model breaks down because today's models are trained on this data, not just accessing it. It's one of the reasons why we have the case between OpenAI and the New York Times. The challenge, once your data has trained a system, you can't just delete the record and walk away. You have to ensure that the design aspect, honoring the privacy implications of your deployment, are prioritized up front, privacy by design. This provides limited and deliberate data usage from the outset, minimizing what's fed into models and exploring synthetic alternatives when risk is too high. Synthetic data. This is important.
You mentioned AI LLMs learning from our data. I know you mentioned also the OpenAI New York Times lawsuit that's happening, and a federal judge has actually suspended OpenAI's ability to release your data after 30 days, which it's supposed to do,
Indeed.
because the federal court ruling says, no, OpenAI, you need to hold on to all of your log files in perpetuity because of this lawsuit with the Times. So that's
a lot of things, assumptions we make about the privacy of information that we submit to other parties. We have to remember that other parties are other parties with the particular implications and demands or legal risks that go with that. Just because you're one party to a lawsuit doesn't mean that other company and the data you've given them won't be. So, indeed, innovation versus invasion, the balancing act. The tension isn't hypothetical, it's operational. Teams want to innovate while legal raises red flags about vendor privacy policies, and boards ask about GDPR compliance. Data drift, slow expansion of how models use sensitive input, often without anyone noticing. Shadow AI, teams experimenting with unvetted tools off the radar. And consent confusion, vague privacy policies that fail to reflect how AI actually handles user data. Why this roundtable? Why now? Today, we're hosting this virtual roundtable on AI and data privacy. We're going to have a strategic discussion so that we can share part of this community aspect here. So we share our challenges, risks, and ideas. And one of the things that we hang our hat on that we will use as a touchstone from time to time will be some standard frameworks that are out there, such as ISO 42001 and the NIST AI risk management framework, and hopefully use this to map some actionable insights in this roundtable discussion. Without further ado, let me stop sharing and begin to pose this question to the group. And I suppose I'll start this simple. By show of hands, who has or is building a product that is customer facing, that has customer data in it? Yeah, Richard, I know you are. Blum, I know you are. Okay. So of that product that you're building, either that you have built or that you are building, have you given some consideration to the privacy policy for that product? And Richard, I'll start with you.
privacy in the way that you're describing it here. We built a product called Trial Lift, which effectively helps trial lawyers to prepare or automates the whole process of the trial preparation. It interfaces with the case management system, which typically stores the locations, all of the documents that pertain to like a trial. Plus, we integrate with that the ability to either prompt private LLMs or public LLMs. What we've done to address the privacy issue is it's really two parts of the prompting process. One is we've built guardrails that flag and prohibit an employee from using PI or client-related information, HIPAA information, anything that would be totally inappropriate to include in a prompt. Because remember, the prompt can be just as much of an issue because the LLM is going to take that prompt and write its own internal prompt. So it's going to learn from that prompt. So you have to preemptively prevent the user from exposing on privacy information on the front end. Then on the back end, when the hallucinations invariably come in, there's also guardrails that identify that, strike out information if it does come back from the LLM that's inappropriate. Lord knows there's probably PII and all kinds of information out there because people were uploading their tax returns to ChatGPT. So you have to anticipate that you might get back the same kind of information. So you really need to cover both sides of the spectrum. At least that's how we've done so in our app. And these guardrails it's an ongoing iterative process because obviously the AI landscape is changing. We'll have to revisit it when ChatGPT 5 comes out, as most of us will need to adjust to that reality as well. But it is an ongoing kind of organic process to be able to prevent these AI tools from exposing, in addition to the human component, of course,
Indeed.
but the AI as well.
Indeed. Now, you touched on a couple of very interesting things. This app, Trial Lift, is probably much better positioned than your average app, especially with those guardrails in there. Proactive management of these privacy concerns rather than just reacting to them. It's almost as if it has great proximity to a governance brand that's focused on those things. But moving on. Lama, you also raised your hand. Did you want to give a talk a little bit about the platform that you're either building or have built and some of those privacy concerns that you're seeing?
Yeah, so we're still in the very early research stages, but as far as the things we've been doing, as we're now starting to build like the first version of our MVP. We consulted with an attorney just to first of all understand what are some of the risks and things like that, and one of the limits, as far as the limits, because in the initial stage, what we're trying to do is, because it's two-facing, whereas not only we have the end user, because what we're working on is a mental health app, the end user, they're actually going to be doing the check-ins and sharing things that might be very personal. We also have the ability for their therapist that they can share as well. So we're going right now, we're in the process of interviewing, just understanding what their concerns are, what the potential issues are. And then as far as even with this early version, we don't have as many guardrails in place. So we're doing a pilot just to let them know, hey, this is information that's going to be collected. This is how the data is going to be used. And it's a small pilot. So upfront, that's what we're working on with them on. And so what we're going to do is we're going to be developing our infrastructure when we do decide to go. We're ready to go to that second phase where we can work with a bigger pool of people. We're going to have a lot of things more in place. So we just brought in one of my friends who's actually a chief technology officer. And so we're working with him as far as just making sure that we have the right parameters in place and kind of preparing as we think about the phased approach that we're doing. Because in this first round, we're just making sure that it's accurate. And that's part of the reason why we're partnering with therapists as well. Because one of the things that was addressed earlier was hallucinations. And so we want to make sure the data that's being processed and shared is as accurate as possible as we're refining the algorithm, but then also let them know, hey, as we're going through this testing process, this is the data that's being collected, and this is how we're ensuring that it's not on the main server, but we're actually putting it on a separate cloud server. So those are some things we're kind of putting up front with those that we have doing the first pilot version. We're doing an initial test.
Excellent. Now and please feel free to share what only you feel comfortable sharing. Safe space, but trade secrets are trade secrets. With the AI components that are or being considered for that, are you using a base model? Are you training a new model? Are you making one from scratch?
No, we're working on training one from scratch potentially. We're just exploring those options. To start off with, we started off with using a base model that we've been testing we first started just with using Gemini. It'll be initially, then we're just testing just to see how the flow or just using the chat, right? Embedded and just from a prototype standpoint. But now, as we start just talking about some of the potential challenges of using some of these base models, we're looking at what it would take to actually create one from scratch. And so we're still in the early phases of that, but we haven't fully fleshed that out yet. We're still in the early phases of using some of the current models that we're leveraging.
Excellent. No, it's a very important thing to move with that level of intentionality. And I pose this question to you, but also open this up to the group, that as you're starting to pilot this out and investigate this model, are you attempting to measure, because this is actually a little bit of two-pronged, there's the private data that you put in that you're testing this could have some effect on how, ideally it should, have some effect on how you plan on prompting that system, the system prompts you designed for that, how you're using that. Again, that's part of the point of the pilot, right? How much of a challenge do you find it to be to test this system with some internal private data now and plan for the fact that this model could drift, but the data that I have now, it's private. I really can only use this with immediate consent. I can't just keep this as a test data set forever. Or do I go back and ask for perpetual consent to use this internally? Which starts to touch on data provenance. Have you given some thought on that provenance of data, even for testing and keeping and retaining that and training your models? Has anybody else have any challenges or concerns around keeping some data that you thought would just be, this is a one-off, I don't have to worry about keeping this. Oh, wait, no, this is now an important part of how I train or test this model. I need to be intentional about where this came from and how I'm using it and how I'm keeping it.
Yeah.
For us, that's been one of the things we've been talking about from the very beginning is, okay, if we're doing this initial test, because we're phasing the base first on user engagement. We want to first test the hypothesis that people will actually, based on the design of the platform, they'll actually use it and use it consistently. We'll see we'll just measure how they're using it. But in this initial phase, we're not going to save any of the data. We're just first phasing out as far as the user engagement and how frequently they're using it, how that's affecting the model in the back end. We're going to just monitor that, and then we're going to scrap the data, and then we're going to start over again, because it's going to be just a short pilot. We're just testing that first phase. But then the next step will be obviously what you're saying as far as for the perpetual data. That's we're kind of trying to identify how that would work. And so we're planning that out for the next phase.
Now, for the system that you're putting together, since you're evaluating whether or not you want to train system, but you haven't had it yet, this is really part of your operational flow. The model you're using, whether or not it's Gemini, your base model, whether or not it's Gemini or something else, this isn't a training set that's going to be a permanent part of the fine tuning of this model, correct?
No, it's not.
Okay. Is anybody else working with models or either creating their own models or doing fine tuning of models with existing data? We will get into whether or not it's private data, get into existing data.
No, but I think you have to, in order to test our system, we would not use a ChatGPT, obviously. We would use a closed LLM, but in order to really test the efficacy, the accuracy of our product, we would want to take like a prior trial that went through trial and whatever the denomination was, and take all the files and data and information and images and whatnot, emails, all that massive construct of data, run it through our LLM to see if we got, run it through our product to see if we got a similar result, or did we come up with a different strategy for trying this trial that might have been a little bit easier than what was actually deployed? Did we expose aspects in the trial that weakened the plaintiff's position or the defendant's position such that you could ask for more money? Those kinds of considerations. So that you can only really truly do with real actual data, because you're benchmarking it against the real data set, even though you're running it through scenarios.
I think the legal and regulatory concept that we should probably talk about, and Blama, kudos to you for talking to a lawyer first, but the one concept or construct that you want to have a conversation with your legal representation is the difference between intended use and acceptable use. So every privacy policy for every product that you use has a section for intended and acceptable use of data. So if you intend to use any data that is identifying in any way, shape, or form to an individual and could be considered to lead to algorithmic harm, you really want to ensure that you have some sort of notification to the end user that says, this is the way that we're going to use it. And we may be using it for experimental purposes to make the product better for your for your benefit, the benefit of the customer. Every product that you use, every app that you use that has AI in the background does the same thing. And regardless of what the regulatory construct is or the regulatory schema that is involved, they all come down to what is they start with the privacy principles ahead of time, and then they lead to how could this, or then they tie those into, well, here are the data subject rights. How could that in the use of this product actually lead to some sort of algorithmic harm? Now, you want to make sure that as you develop your privacy policy, that, you are speaking to the customer or the user, potential user of the application that you're building, and say, this is how we're using it. This is the intended use. This is the acceptable use. We're doing everything that we can to not make it lead to some sort of algorithmic harm. Sorry, my 0.02.
Yes, that's perfect. You left indeed. You brought up a couple of key points there, and let's see how we can navigate around them. That's meaty. So one of the key things there, as we start to talk about that, is that intentionality around the data, and bringing that back. That as we're talking about this data, focusing on data flowing in and out of these LLM systems, a lot of this goes back to what is your privacy policy, what is your data posture, what's the intentionality around this data. All of this needed to be in place today. All of this needed to be in place before AI was a thing. Let's speak to IT governance around this and traditionally in these systems. Question to the group. In the IT posture that you have, big or small organization, have you implemented governance policies around, regardless of whether or not you're in healthcare or anybody else where this is already a regulatory requirement, have you implemented any IT policies specifically related to privacy of user data, user or client data? Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I can add a few things, but
Go ahead.
No, yes, please.
yeah, and basically, it's all around data. It's all I have a lot of thoughts coming into my head. I'll try to streamline my thought process and share the essential part of it. So it's all use case driven. First of all, you need to identify what are the use cases that we are putting in this product, right? And like many people said, what kind of policy that is required to implement that kind of use case? What is the data behind that use case? In that data, do we have sensitive data, right? Like you said, customer data, not all customer data may be sensitive, right? You need to identify what is sensitive before you do anything. And all these things should be vetted out with the governance council and the governance committee, right?
Indeed.
Before you do anything, that's an essential part of it. You have to establish a governance council and governance committee, vet the use case and vet out the data that is going to be used. Do we need to encrypt the data beforehand, at least for the testing purpose? How the data is going to be used? Is the data going to be used only for processing within a model, or is the data going to be displayed on a dashboard as part of a result coming out of a model? So you need to think through everything and then make a decision, right? Make a policy around all of this, right? So that's one thought that I have that I just wanted to mention here.
Well, absolutely. That's a fantastic thread. Let's continue to follow that. Because that's one of the topics I want to build on there, that you need to ensure that you have something of a governance process to begin with, just around your traditionally around your data, part of your holistic IT process. That is a foundation of which you can start to build your AI governance posture. So without that IT foundation, without that data governance foundation, Any IDI governance you start to build on top is already built on shaky foundation, if there's any foundation there at all. And to really do AI governance well, you have to build out that bottom part. So this is an important part of the conversation because this helps to establish, all right, so we do need to talk about how AI is consuming this data, how it's using it, how it's spitting that back out, who's prompting the system with what. But all of this is on shaky ground if we don't address the fundamental governance implications and requirements first. They're not, you're 110% on point.
Yeah, data is prerequisite, like you said, is prerequisite for AI, right? You put garbage in, garbage out is what they say, but when it comes to sensitive data, that part needs to be addressed first completely before you start feeding into an AI model.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So
I have a question, Chris, and has such a solid, stupendous background really in this space, particularly coming out from the corporate interactions. I'm thinking about, what about entrepreneurs? What about people like me? Now, you and I also have Cognify together, and I've stated many times until people tell me not to, that there is a moral imperative to marry your governance and data security with your AI or agentic solutions. To do one without the other, well, you could do AI governance and data security separate, but to provide AI solutions or agentic solutions without that piece, I think is just flat out wrong.
Yeah.
We know that there are many entrepreneurs out there, and this is why for us, it's almost become like a rallying cry, because it's a thing. There's all kinds of apps coming out of AI at lightning speed. And the real question, is there anybody out there in that space following any kind of guardrails or any kind of governance or any kind of data management to speak of? That's my concern. Because I know I'm one of them, but fortunately, I have you and everyone on this webinar to learn from and the importance and reinforce the importance of AI.
I have been hearing, in one of the webinars or one of the conversations, somebody was telling me doctors are uploading patients' records onto ChatGPT to ask for the diagnosis, which is pretty dangerous, right? So unless you have guardrails for the model that you are exposing to the doctors, when such a thing happens, it should stop, right? It should not let that record be uploaded. So they need
Happening in the US, or is that happening outside the US that doctors are doing that?
In the US, I think Jane had something that she wanted to.
Yeah, please.
Hold on. So the reason I'm asking is because that's a direct HIPAA violation.
Exactly. Ronnie,
Yes.
exactly. That is a HIPAA violation. I had a question for Richard. You said you built guardrails with your app. Now, have you tested it? Have you thrown okay.
Yeah.
And it's caught it?
Yeah, we started off building like guardrail individual rules. I built the app in Replit, which is a useful and relatively easy app to buy code in. And we started off creating like a dozen guardrails, and I keep adding to it because there's different use cases and different parameters that come across. And it basically updates that. And yeah, I'm able to enter a prompt with social security number, fake information, and it'll flag it and list, I've tested it with different types of input, both on the prompting side and both on the outcome side. And so far it's worked really well.
Yeah, Chris mentioned the shadow AI in one of his slides. Like people can bring their own iPhones, iPads to any place, and then they take a picture of a record, upload it. Nobody is stopping. And I know we have all these HIPAA, PCI.
And then they import it into ChatGPT and ask it to convert the image into text.
Yes,
The only real way you can get around that, or the only way that you can address that, is two ways. There are two different technologies, and Jane, you were going someplace that I was going to go. For one-off development for individual entrepreneurs, what Richard is doing is spot on. That's great, and I would hope that all developers, all small businesses were as that conscientious. But there's a whole suite of tools, and that's the second thing. There's the whole suite of tools that are on one side that are specifically for data loss prevention, that are designed to prevent all but the acceptable and allowed traffic going through the network. So anything that's going through to ChatGPT is not going to go through to ChatGPT. There's also another whole class of software, and this is for small to mid-tier organizations stretching into the enterprise, which is LLM firewalls, which act on very similar principle to DLP solutions, only they're very specific to ensuring that the prompt language going into a language model is filtered for what you don't want to go into a language model. And oh, by the way, do you want it to go to one that's only hosted internally, or do you want to allow it for external traffic, which you would have to hit the DLP firewall rule or DLP allowed rules or whitelisted rules. And oh, by the way, what models do we really want to allow both internally and externally? And what sort of prompt responses do we want to go back to the individuals? So you do RBAC, ABAC, DAC rules to ensure that an individual actually has the capability and the right to know what's in the prompt response from that language model. For small organizations, what Richard is doing is spot on. Once you get to the point where you need to scale your solutions or scaling your AI systems, you have to scale your solutions because you're not gonna hit it.
Yeah. And when somebody tries to upload that kind of data, they have to log that information somewhere on the network, and they have to flag that individual and take the necessary action.
I want to open that up to that as a question. And this we're coming up on time, so I may want to make this last question, but I want to open it up. So excellent points. And on that, for anybody using any type of data loss system, actually, show of hands, who's using data loss prevention?
Did.
Fair. Okay.
When I was corporate, I did.
If you're not currently using a data loss prevention system, who here has had to deal with a colleague, partner, coworker, subordinate who has taken private data and put it in an LLM and you only found out about it after the fact?
I was a privacy officer, so I had to deal with that. I had to fire people too.
You won't be able to do if they are doing it on their own private devices.
If they're exfiltrating data and they're sending it to their own private device, that's even worse.
Indeed.
That is even worse. Yeah.
That should be an implied closed loop, because if they're doing that, say they're working on a letter back to a client, let's use a doctor's office, for example. They're writing up a follow-up letter or a collection letter or some clarification, whatever. They're putting the patient data in and they use it to draft a letter. If they send that letter out, it should come back to the doctor, should come back to their practice manager that, hey, yeah, I did my work. I used this tool. Wait, you did what with what? How did you do that? That's a problem. If they're doing that and not coming back to you, whatever that is, that's a different issue. Governance will be important, probably HR governance. That may be an important conversation.
And one of the things that kind of was a hangover from COVID is during COVID, especially in the public sector, they relied a lot on people using their own home computers and laptops because they didn't have enough to loan out to people because it just wasn't a thing. So they used VPN and in some cases tokens as a way to ensure that even if you peered into their network, you could not expose it to whatever's on your own personal configuration, browsers, hard drives, and whatnot, so that if you brought it onto your personal computer and threw it into ChatGPT, you'd be violating everything from Kingdom Come. Todd's, VPNs are a good way to close the loop there, but I don't know if they're the end all. Todd, you would know that.
Yeah, when I was doing contract consulting for a company in the UK, I used a VPN because I was working from home. So it was helpful.
They have a service it's deprecated now, but it's still used in a lot of networks called Radius.
Yeah.
That's dating yourself a little bit.
Only because I did a project during COVID. They were using them. They were the tokens they were still using.
Yeah. Were they using steel belted?
Those physical tokens. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a product called steel belted radius that used to be the thing during the day, but there are modern techniques, but they actually come down to the same thing. So if you understand the principles behind radius, you get the principles, more modern techniques.
Indeed. All right, so we're coming up on time. I want to share some information about the community for those of us those who have joined us but may not be members yet. Again, Cognify Solutions is a company, a brand, part of Nexus Systems, dedicated to ensuring that organizations are able to make AI work ethically, transparently, at scale. We want to ensure that governance in this space is not a bolt-on, it's not an afterthought, it's not a, oh, we got to check this box. It's something that can be implemented strategically and is an enabler, is something that will actually allow you to move faster and better than your competitors without it. If you have not joined the community, I'm putting a link in the chat right now. And that will give us a little bit of information about you and ultimately be able to point you to the portal where we're going to be posting replays, posting some further information, some resources, and it's an area where you folks can connect with one another and help support one another. If you would like further information about anything that we've discussed today, I'm going to put our contact us link in the chat as well. Please feel free to reach out to us and schedule a one-on-one. That being said, I will leave the rest of this time for open discussion. We can continue this discussion. If you have questions about Cognify or the community, please feel free to post them now. Please continue.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify one thing. When Todd mentioned earlier, in a smaller scale, it's probably a little bit easier to control who has access to return data from prompts if the content shouldn't be viewable by that individual. We thought of creating different user levels and for our application whereby, because there's an element where an attorney can see their return from the LLM and they can decide whether to modify it or not. So like in the procurement process, they may not be able to do that without the approval of the partner on that particular case. So we're using things like different user levels and security levels to manage in a way what Todd referred to on a smaller scale. But yeah, once you get into a bigger realm, then it's a much bigger problem.
To this point, I would also say products that we're working on that are currently under development is a gateway application for LLM systems and a GRC system that has a process discovery component to it. So I would say, especially in the mid-tier, that GRC may really shine, but even on the small to medium tier, that LLM gateway doesn't have to be just for enterprise. That may be more critical for folks who are just using, having a small office and folks are using the shadow AI. It may be high time to say, please use this interface. Don't just throw it out there. We don't have a lot of control or oversight into where that's going and how that's getting stored.
So, Chris, is this a section of the talk that's like, the internal combustion engine is neither internal nor combustion? Discuss. How many get the reference?
Yes, discuss.
Discuss amongst yourselves. There's a great mission for LLM firewalls. It's called Security with an I, SECURITI. And it's not exactly a full-blown AI governance solution, but it's a really good security or LLM firewall solution. And it does do a really good job at looking at what is actually running on individual machines and to see how many people are operating AI solutions, either point solutions or more enterprisey, wave your hand type enterprisey solutions. It's really good at that. So check it out and maybe we'll have a talk on it at some point.
SECURII?
ITI, security.
security. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really good for for the mid tier as well. But for individual small business owners, it's a little too pricey for that.
Fair enough. It's one of the things that while we have a passion for this up and down market, if there's an opportunity to be able to speak into that, to add value, to help a enterprise course correct, doesn't matter the size, we want to have that conversation. But I will say that we have a particular interest in ensuring that some of the largest volume of users of these technologies, which are small and mid-market businesses, we want to ensure that those folks have these right tools. So if there's something that's overpriced up market, then let's see if we can figure out how to get a solution down market.
This has been a really insightful conversation, you guys. I really appreciate it. It just really opened my mind to really leaning into my clients, training their staff how to securely use information and so, thinking beyond my clients and their team and such. So thank you so much for having this conversation. I really appreciate being a part of this community.
Jane,
I second your, thank you so
Thank you
much
for coming, Jane.
Thank you for all the insights.
Vinod, thank you for coming. And Jane, if you need any help in that training, if you need any guidance, resources, also
Going to, and I'm going to reach out. So I appreciate that. I just always learning, growing, expanding, and using that information to share with others to do the same. So I really do appreciate it.
fantastic. Glad to have you, Jane. We'll be in touch.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
See ya.
All right. And then there were 3 and 4. There were 4. Well, we do like to leave a little bit of extra time. If there's any topics you guys want to get into, Lama, I still see you. Socrates, I still see you. Oh, never mind. Lama, I still see you. We do try to leave a little bit of overflow. That's why I wanted to make sure we drop our links and bookend ahead. So some time to get into.
Oh, no. Good move putting up the slide at the end. But if you do that, probably want to linger a little bit longer, but good move nonetheless.
Yeah. Is it on screen right now?
Yep. Yeah.
I shared it a different way. I wasn't sure that came up the way I wanted it to.
Yeah, looks good.
All right, cool. Bilal, what's on your mind?
I don't know. I'm just thinking now, like, this is a really good call as we're starting to just think as far as the next phase is coming up in our project. And really, we're already being very intentional because from the very beginning, we knew if we're going to incorporate AI with this, we're going to have to be very, very intentional around security and privacy of data, especially with a lot of data that we're going to be having you access to from a video standpoint and things like that. How do we anonymize it? We're just going through that process. But like now, I'm just thinking even more so. Like we got to.
There's a concept we didn't get a chance to discuss. I'm really wondering whether or not we should make these longer. Because I don't want to belabor anybody's time or attention, but these are definitely meaty conversations and presentations. Something you want to look into is called synthetic data.
I started playing around with that a little bit. It's pretty interesting.
Indeed.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be terribly complex. It's as complex a topic as you need it to be. If you just need to ensure that you're testing AI's handling and throughput with user logins and sign up and things like that, and you just need to synthesize email addresses, first names, last names, and a little bit of user behavior, all right, that's fairly straightforward. But if you're building an app in the mental health space, the type of synthetic data that you're going to need and the intentionality you need to have behind it's going to get a little bit more complex.
Yeah.
But if you really start digging down into that, you're going to be able to find that you can start to model things more realistically. But again, it tends to be a push-pull a little bit. You can say, hey, this is the same record, but I changed the name and the social security number on it. Everything else in the record is live information. That might not be sufficient, the anonymization.
And here's the thing. If you hearken back to traditional software days, you run a user acceptance testing phase that typically has production data.
That's true.
Because that's always been the end-all test. You can't sign off on UAT until it behaves exactly how production will behave. That's by design. You know, that's a little bit easier to containerize because you got firewalls, you run your UAT, whatever. In the world of AI, where you're introducing, as we've said, LLMs, that's a whole other ballgame. Because even a private LLM can hallucinate, even within a very narrow scope of content and data that you're going to interrogate it. Gen AI products by design hallucinate.
Yeah. Indeed.
Yeah, and I mean that was part of the reason why we brought in the therapists. We're like, hey, we're not, especially in the early things continue.
Oh, you guys are really worrying about this.
Oh, absolutely. We're
Yeah.
like, we therapists and then to confirm the data and just
Just no lawyer. Good.
yeah, very important. Yeah, because people already use it. It's so interesting when you bring up the example with a doctor and things like that. Like people are already using these things. I was reading in a Harvard Business Review article not too long ago about how people are already using these things as personal therapy. They're using ChatGPT. They're putting all their data in. We know how to use this to use the privacy settings. They're not even looking at that. So it's really it's deep.
It's kind of crazy, but yeah, you can build persona. Like I built a persona of my daughter. I built a persona of my wife. And I use it to pre-frame conversations I have with them to try to tamp down my kind of normal confrontational type of communication style. And it's helpful, because it's when you have a conversation with even a synthetic one, you're getting feedback on how your words are landing. And it really helps. But yeah, to your point, a psychiatrist uploading all of her patient information into an LLM to use that as a means to, with good intentions, to ask the prevailing questions or what the answers from the client are really saying, given where they are and the full scope of the information. I can see the benefit of that, but yeah, I can also see red flags in abundance.
Fortunately, like in our interviews so far, therapists are very skeptical and they don't really mess. They already are very skeptical of a lot of technology and things like that.
Anyone who has client privilege should never be using AI.
Yeah.
We're certainly not public LLMs.
So that's the thing. And it's funny, as when we first started using the synthetic data, we were just looking to see how potentially we can create like avatars of, potential interviews. We were just playing around with it. And then with them, like you said, Chris, we can use it for the testing of actual potential use.
Indeed.